Hi students, let me start group 18, the last group of P block. Group 18 elements are called as noble gases. They are also called as inert gases. They do not react with any element. Of course, to some extent xenon and to a very small extent krypton, they react with fluorine, oxygen to form some compounds, but generally their reactivity is very, very less. So they are called as inert gases. They are also called as noble gases. All of you, do you remember we do have some noble metals which generally do not react with any element. Gold, platinum. If you remember, we discussed in HNO3. Aqua regia, HCl plus HNO3, that is aqua regia. Gold and platinum are soluble in that particular solution particularly. But gold and platinum do not react with HCl, do not react with HNO3 separately. So they are noble metals. So like that we have noble gases. Okay. Now, in this group 18, we have helium, neon, argon, krypton and xenon. We also have radon, but it is radioactive. We don't know much about radon, and chemistry of radon is not necessary for us either. So let me tell you some important points about these 5 elements: helium, neon, argon, krypton and xenon. First let me explain, let me give you the information regarding their occurrence. Okay, where they are available? If you remember, in the previous groups, group 15, group 16, group 17, even group 13, 14, when we studied occurrence, suppose for example, when it comes to fluorine, how fluorine is available in the nature? Is it diatomic fluorine? Is F2 directly available in nature? No. It is available in the form of compounds, fluorapatite, fluorspar, cryolite. Similarly, if you see the occurrence of boron, it is available in the form of its compounds. And you go to silicon. Okay, na? So all the elements, almost all the elements in the previous groups, they are reactive to some extent. So as a result, they are available in the nature in the form of their compounds. But I already told you, the reactivity of these elements is very, very less. So these elements are available as elements. That means in their elemental form. Helium is available as helium because helium does not form any compound. Neon is available as neon. Okay, but where are they available? One source of these noble gases is atmospheric air. All these noble gases, all these noble gas elements, all the 5 are present in the atmosphere. That is one source. And among these 5 elements, argon is the most abundant element. Of course, in the atmosphere. Okay, second source of these noble gases, particularly helium. If you come to helium particularly, then helium is also available in radioactive minerals. Minerals of uranium, minerals of plutonium, for example, pitchblende, monazite, etc. So helium particularly is available in these minerals also. And if you come to third source, and again the source of helium. Helium is present in natural gas resources. So apart from hydrocarbons, natural gas resources, they also contain to some extent helium. And this is the commercial source of helium. Commercially, on a large scale, helium is obtained from natural gas resources. Although it is present along with some radioactive minerals, it is also present in the atmospheric air, but large scale helium extraction is not from first two sources. It is actually from natural gas. Okay. So this is something about occurrence of these noble gases. Okay. If you come to uses, particularly helium. Do you know where this helium is used? I told you on a large scale it is extracted from this natural gas resource. But why? Why we have to extract helium on a large scale? What we will do with that? So what are the uses of helium? I will tell you two main uses. The first one is to cool magnets in MRI missions. You all must have heard about MRI. See, in the hospitals, CT scan, MRI scan, okay, na, to diagnose some disease, what is the problem inside our body, to determine that. So doctors perform various types of scans. One is CT scan, another one is MRI scan. Under that MRI scanning machine, there are big magnets, and to cool those magnets, helium is used. And you know, boiling point of helium is just 4.2 Kelvin. 4.2 Kelvin, not degree Celsius. So that means it is almost minus 269 degrees Celsius. And the second use of helium is in balloons. Actually, helium, you all know, it is it has second lowest density after hydrogen, of course. So hydrogen is the best for use in balloons, but hydrogen has one problem: it is inflammable. It readily catches fire, and due to that advantage, helium is better than hydrogen. Although helium has the second lowest density, you fill a balloon with helium, and helium is very light, 4 gram per mole, its molar mass. But outside air molar mass is approximately 29 gram per mole, and as a result the balloon acquires the lift, buoyancy, Archimedes principle. Okay, so in balloons also we use these helium. So main two uses of helium. And if you come to some properties, you can say periodic properties, atomic size, electronegativity, electronic configuration, ionization potential, etc. If you see some periodic properties, now first let me tell you about electronic configuration. All the noble gases, except helium of course, they have outermost shell electronic configuration, that is Ns2Np6, completely filled outermost shell. Of course, that is the reason why they are not reactive. They do not want electron, they are not ready to give electron because their outermost shell is full. Okay, and helium has an electronic configuration of 1s2 because the outermost shell of helium is first shell itself, so it has 1s2. And all other noble gases have this configuration. So anyway, in all the noble gases including helium, the respective outermost shells, they are completely filled. Now, if you come to the second point, that is atomic size. So, you all must have studied in periodic properties, periodic classification. Along a period, size decreases. Whatever may be the reason, the effective nuclear charge increases, so the nucleus will attract the electrons more strongly along a period when you move gradually from left to right. So, size decreases, but the size decreases until fluorine. If you see a periodic table, if you observe the atomic sizes, then until fluorine the size decreases. Carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine, but from fluorine to neon, size all of a sudden increases. You know this already. Okay. So, in a respective period, the size of the noble gases is the highest, but down the group the size increases. So, normal trend. But why in a particular period the size of the noble gas is higher, especially higher than its previous element? Neon is bigger than fluorine, argon is bigger than chlorine. Okay. In fluorine, for example, when you study about atomic size, we study about covalent radii, covalent radius of fluorine. That means half of the internuclear distance in a fluorine molecule. But when you study the size of neon, neon does not form any compound. So, covalent radius does not exist. Metallic radius does not exist for neon. And in the case of neon, or you can say in the case of any noble gas, we take van der Waals radii. And van der Waals radius is obviously bigger. Because in covalent radius, the situation is like this. Atoms come very close to each other and there is some overlap. So, half of the internuclear distance is taken as covalent radius. But when it comes to van der Waals radius, it is like this. We have a neon atom like this, and we have another neon atom like this. They come only that much closer because they are not forming any bond. And we take the internuclear distance and we divide that by 2. We take it as the atomic size of neon and we call it as van der Waals radius. So, the atom of neon may actually be smaller, that we do not know. But we are taking, because we are taking van der Waals radius, so obviously van der Waals, half of this internuclear distance is definitely greater than half of this internuclear distance. So, that is the reason why these noble gases are the big elements. Actually, the trend, the atomic size decreases along a period. That trend stops at halogens, because after halogens there is a sudden increase in the size. And in the group, size increases. Like elsewhere in the periodic table, size increases in a group. Okay. If you come to the third point, that is ionization potential. And if you come to the fourth point, that is electron gain enthalpy. Both ionization potential and electron gain enthalpy of noble gases, they are very high because of that completely filled valence shell. And you tell me why this particular element wants to take an electron, and why this particular element wants to give an electron, donate an electron. So, it is not necessary. No tendency to donate, no tendency to accept. So, both ionization potential and electron gain enthalpy values of these noble gases, they are very high. And if you see the group trend, then ionization potential decreases down the group. And this electron gain enthalpy also decreases down the group because size increases. But in the respective periods, they have the highest ionization potential, and they have the highest electron gain enthalpies. And we discussed already in our previous classes, electron gain enthalpy values are negative in some cases and positive in some cases. Suppose if you take fluorine, negative, that means when you add electron to neutral gaseous atom, energy is released. Suppose if you take chlorine, again negative, but if you take nitrogen, it is positive. And electron gain enthalpy values of all noble gases are positive. That means you have to force electron upon the noble gas, otherwise it does not take. It does not have any tendency to accept electron. So if you want to make He minus, you have to force electron on helium. So that means you have to provide energy, then only it takes, by force, not naturally. So electron gain enthalpy values are positive. Okay, these are the some of the periodic properties of noble gases. You see, ionization potential very high, electron gain enthalpy very high, because of that completely filled valence shell, and that is the reason these compounds do not form any they are not reactive, and these elements do not form any compounds. And because of that nature, not forming any compounds, not reacting with any other elements, in nature they are present as it is, not in the form of compounds but in elemental states. Now let us continue with the group 18 elements. Now let me discuss about chemical reactions of chemical properties of these elements. So I already told you, to some extent krypton and to a large extent xenon, they form compounds. Helium, neon, argon, they do not form any compounds. So let me tell you some details of compounds of xenon and compounds of krypton. Now actually, whether xenon and krypton, or whether any noble gas, whether they can form compounds or not, because everybody knows that they have completely filled shell. So the first doubt that a noble gas can form a compound, that came when this compound was discovered, that is O2 plus PTF6 minus, which is a red colored compound. And actually there are two important points regarding that compound. One is the cation is O2 plus, which has an odd electron, and that is the reason why it is red in color. Generally compounds having odd electrons are colored, NO2 brown in color, but N2O4 colorless. This is one thing. And another thing is that the ionization potential, delta ionization H0 of O2 is 1175 kilojoules per mole, and the same ionization potential of xenon is 1170 kilojoules per mole. So when this compound was discovered, many people thought that if O2 can be converted into O2 plus, then why not Xc? Because ionization potential values of O2 and xenon are almost same. If you can remove electron from oxygen, then why not from xenon? So then the experiments started, and gradually so many compounds of xenon came into being, and to small extent even compounds of krypton were also discovered. But helium, neon and argon, these compounds do not react with any other elements. Even with fluorine, you know, the most reactive element in the entire periodic table is fluorine. But even with such a reactive element, helium, neon and argon, they do not react. Krypton forms only one compound, that is KrF2. Xenon forms fluorides, it forms oxides, it forms oxofluorides. For example, if you list out the compounds of xenon, XeF2 difluoride, XeF4 tetrafluoride, XeF6 hexafluoride, XeO3 trioxide, XeO4 tetroxide, XeOF4, XeO2F2, oxofluorides, xenon oxofluorides. So these are some of the compounds of xenon and krypton. Now let us see what are the structures of these compounds, how these compounds are prepared, and what are the chemical reactions of these compounds. Okay, if you come to structures first. And it is not new to you. With the chemical bond background, you can derive the structure of any of these compounds. Hybridization, shape, and how many lone pairs are there, how many bond pairs are there. Okay, suppose if you come to XeF2, xenon is forming two bonds. That means the electronic configuration, of course the excited electronic configuration must be like this. One electron excited into D, NS2, NP5, and one electron excited to N-1 D. And these two electrons are responsible for formation of these two bonds. And what is the hybridization? sp3d. So xenon structure will be like this. And you know, in sp3d hybridization, lone pairs must be accommodated at the equatorial position. So 2 fluorines will go to axial position and 3 lone pairs will be at the equatorial position. So linear in shape, isostructural with I3 minus. Okay, then if you come to XeF4, then in this case the electronic configuration excited, and you need to excite 2 electrons because xenon is forming 4 bonds. So 2 lone pairs and 4 unpaired electrons. The hybridization is sp3d2, and lone pairs must be kept as far as possible. Maximum distance between, more the distance between the lone pairs, better it is, more stable. So we can write down XeF4 structure like this. 2 lone pairs 180 to each other, and the rest of the positions are occupied by fluorine. Octahedral geometry, square planar shape. So XeF4 is square planar. Okay, then if you come to XeF6, the third compound. Now we need to excite one more electron. So as a result, the excited configuration here must be 3 electrons in the p subshell and 3 electrons in the d subshell. And the hybridization is sp3 d3. And all of you must have studied. In sp3 d3, in this example, 1 lone pair and 6 bonds. So what is the shape? Do you remember, all of you? It is called as either distorted octahedral or capped octahedral. Okay. The shape of XeF6 is distorted octahedral. So I am not drawing the shape here, but I can make you imagine that. See, you take this room, wherever you sit. So it is roughly cubical, roughly. Now, in the center of that classroom, or whichever room you are sitting in, the center of that room there is xenon. And there are 6 phases. You take those phase centers. So this is one phase center. To your right, left, above, below, and in front and back side. So there are 6 phases, 6 phase centers. And there are 6 fluorines. And if you join the 6 phase centers, you will get octahedron. 8 triangular phases. Suppose you take this phase center, ceiling, you take that phase center to your right, and you take this phase center, you join these 3, you will get an equilateral triangle, and we have 8 such phases. That is the reason it is called as octahedron. And I told you in P4 case, we have 4 such phases, equilateral triangular phases, and that is tetrahedron. So tetrahedron has 4 phases and octahedron has 8 phases. Now the lone pair present here, one lone pair, single lone pair, is projected onto any particular triangular face. It is like this. This is one triangular face, this is second, this is third, this is fourth. So above the center we have 4 faces, below the center we have 4 faces. So this lone pair is projected onto any one particular face. And as a result, the bond angles are modified. The bond angles are not 90 here. In a regular octahedron, the bond angles are 90 and 180 of course. But here because of that lone pair in the middle, so all the bond angles are modified. So distorted octahedron. So that is XeF6. It is also called as capped octahedron. Okay, suppose if you come to the next compound, that is XeO3. Oxygen is divalent. So xenon is forming 6 bonds, and obviously there must be one lone pair. So here the electronic configuration excited must be like this. Same excited configuration like here. So we have 3 p electrons and we have 3 d electrons and 3 pi bonds. You know, a hybrid orbital generally does not form a pi bond. A pi bond does not require a hybrid orbital. It is formed by a pure orbital. So the hybridization is only sp3, and sp3 hybridization means and one lone pair with one lone pair. So it is pyramidal in shape. Similarly, you can derive the structure of XeOF4, total 6 bonds, 1 pi bond, and the rest 5 are sigma bonds, one lone pair. And similarly here, if you come here, then here also 6 bonds, 2 double bonds and 2 single bonds. So the way I derived these structures, you can derive now the structure of any other compound, XeO4. So it is a perfect tetrahedron, no lone pair. You see XeO3, one lone pair is left. But if xenon is to form 8 bonds, you cannot have any lone pair. So all the electrons are excited. We require 4 orbitals for pi bond formation and 4 orbitals for sigma bond formation, sp3 hybridization. So this is about structure of some of the compounds of xenon, and this is the list of some compounds of xenon, and this is the origin and discovery of this compound led to the discovery of the compounds of xenon, because oxygen and xenon, they have similar ionization potential. Now let us continue with the chemistry of xenon. How these fluorides and oxides, even oxofluorides, how these compounds are prepared, what are the chemical reactions of those compounds. Okay, suppose if you first come to the fluorides. Now if you come to XeF2, when you mix Xe with fluorine at high temperature, you will get XeF2. When you mix Xe with fluorine, actually stoichiometric ratio, if you balance the reaction, XeF4, then the ratio comes out to be 1:2. But if you mix xenon and fluorine in 1:2 molar ratio, the yields of XeF4 are very less. Some amount of XeF2 is also found. But the yields are optimum. The optimum ratio is 1:5. Required ratio is only 1:2 according to the balanced reaction. But we have to take 1:5 ratio, then the yields are very good. Similarly, if you mix xenon and fluorine, again for the preparation of XeF6, it is only 1:3 ratio. But to the optimum ratio, similar to the XeF4, the optimum ratio here is 1:20. And you have to heat in all cases. So at high temperatures, xenon and fluorine in particular ratios, when you mix them in particular ratios, xenon forms difluoride, tetrafluoride, hexafluoride, and there is one more method of preparation of XeF6, that is from XeF4. You take XeF4 and you treat this with O2F2. All of you do you remember this compound? In group 16 or in group 17, we discussed that this compound is a very good fluorinating agent. It converted plutonium into PuF6. Do you remember this compound is used to remove plutonium from spent nuclear fuel. So fluorinating agent, here also same thing. So you will get XeF6 plus O2. Now these are the methods of preparations of fluorides. Now if you come to chemical reactions, these fluorides participate in two types of chemical reactions. One is hydrolysis, reaction with water, and another one is they react with fluoride donors and fluoride acceptors. So let me discuss about these two types in detail. Now if you come to first hydrolysis, XeF2 undergoes hydrolysis to give xenon plus HF plus O2. XeF4 reacts with water to give xenon plus HF plus XeO3, xenon trioxide plus O2. If you take XeF6 and if you treat this compound with water, actually this compound undergoes hydrolysis at 3 different stages. So at the first stage you will get XeOF4 plus HF. On further hydrolysis you will get XeO2F2 plus HF, and on complete hydrolysis, thoroughly, exhaustive, then you will get the compound XeO3 plus HF. So here excess amount of water and here large excess amount of water. And if you balance the reactions, you will get to know how much water is actually needed. For each mole of XeF6, how many moles of water are needed actually, that you will get to know by balancing simple. But it undergoes hydrolysis in 3 different stages. Okay, here one important point, all of you listen to me very carefully. Normally, in P block, whenever you study hydrolysis of a halide, fluoride, chloride, in group 17, we studied that hydrolysis of interhalogen compounds. In group 15, we studied that hydrolysis of PCl3, PCl5. In group 16 also, we studied that hydrolysis of SF4, sulfur, hexafluoride. So in all those hydrolysis, we have seen that water molecule replaces the halogen one by one exhaustively. Then after that, some water molecules are eliminated from the resultant compound and you will get the final compound. Suppose if you take IF7. In IF7 we have 7 fluorine surrounding atoms. So 7 water molecules attack 1 molecules of IF7. And first you will get IOH taken 7 times. But some water molecules are eliminated. In fact, 3 water molecules, and finally you will get HAO4. And there we also discussed that there should not be any p pi bond. Until you don't get p pi bond, you continue to remove water molecules. Now this is the logic behind hydrolysis. But here in HCF2 and HCF4 particularly, that logic is not working. These are completely redox reactions, disproportionation reactions. And here you see xenon plus 2, and here xenon 0, and here you see xenon plus 4, here 0 and plus 6. This is, here xenon is undergoing disproportionation. But anyway, these two reactions are redox reactions, and only HCF6 is following that trend. That means it is exactly behaving like other halides. Halides of group 17, 15, 16, 14, 13. Only HCF6 is behaving like that. You see, 2 water molecules attacked, 1 water molecule is eliminated, 4 water molecules attacked, 2 water molecules eliminated, 6 water molecules attacked here in the final stage in the Exhaustive hydrolysis. 3 water molecules are eliminated, you got HCO3. And in all these 3 cases, we have all the pi bonds. Wherever there is a pi bond, and that pi bond is p pi d pi bond. In all the 3, HCOF4, HCO2F2 and HCO3. In all the cases, the pi bonds are p pi d pi bonds. So only HCF6 is following the trend. It is behaving like other halides. But in the case of HCF2 and HCF4, the hydrolysis reactions are actually redox reactions. Okay, if you come to this compound especially, that is HCO3. HCO3, if you keep this compound in basic medium, it forms HXeO4 minus, which is called as hydrogen xenate, XeNAT. And that hydrogen xenate disproportionates in the same basic medium, and you will get XeO6 minus 4 plus xenon, these 2 compounds. It disproportionates. You see here xenon is in plus 6 oxidation state, here it is in plus 8 oxidation state. The structure of xenon is, actually its name is perxenate ion. And its structure, you can say it is like this: double bond O, double bond O, O minus, O minus, O minus and O minus. Perxenate ion structure, octahedral geometry, sp3d2 hybridization and plus 8 oxidation state. And this perxenate ion is a very powerful oxidizing agent. And one more important point here is that perxenate ion, whenever it is treated with an acid like concentrated H2SO4, suppose you take a salt of this compound like Ba2XeO6, barium perxenate, and you treat that compound with concentrated H2SO4, you will get XeO4 plus BaSO4 plus water. And this way we can prepare XeO4. So xenon tetroxide, xenon trioxide, and here we got some oxofluorides, and here XeF2 difluoride, tetrafluoride and hexafluoride. Now these are the methods of preparations and some chemical reactions of the compounds of xenon. Let me continue to the chemical reactions of these compounds of xenon, especially fluorides. I have already told you that there are 2 important reactions of fluorides of xenon. One is hydrolysis that we have seen, and another one is these fluorides react with fluoride acceptors as well as fluoride donors. Now let us see the examples. Suppose if you take XeF6, XeF2 let us take, and let me treat it with PF5, phosphorus pentafluoride, and the products are XeF plus, that means we have removed one F minus from this compound, and PF6 minus, XeF plus. Now that is the product. This compound is acting as a Lewis acid. All of you recall? In PF5, the phosphorus has vacant d orbitals. So it can accept the lone pair, and now the lone pair is being donated by the F minus coming from XeF2. So the resultant compound is XeF plus PF6 minus. Halides of xenon reacting with fluoride acceptors. Let me give you one more example. XeF4 plus SbF5, antimony pentafluoride. Antimony pentafluoride is a very strong Lewis acid. All of you try to remember. SbF5. This antimony belongs to the same group, phosphorus. Similar to phosphorus, it also has vacant d orbitals, low-lying vacant orbitals. So it can accept the lone pair from F minus coming from XeF4. So in both the reactions, the xenon fluoride is acting as a fluoride donor, fluorinating agent. Okay. So here the products are XeF3 plus, because we have removed F minus, and SbF6 minus. But one thing all of you remember, even XeF4 itself is a Lewis acid, because even xenon has vacant orbitals, low-lying vacant orbitals. But SbF5 is a strong Lewis acid. So in that combination, XeF4 actually donates F minus. Okay, now suppose if you treat these xenon halides with fluoride donors. Now let me take a compound MF, where M is equal to sodium, potassium, rubidium, etc. Now you treat this compound with a xenon fluoride, for example XeF6. Now this is an ionic compound. Now it is a fluoride donor. Now this fluoride of xenon will act as a Lewis acid. Okay, and here the product is M plus XeF7 minus. So fluorides of xenon react with fluoride acceptors. These two are fluoride acceptors, and this is fluoride donor. And in these reactions, whatever the products obtained, you just analyze the structures of those ionic species, cation, anion. For example, XeF3 plus. So what is the shape of this compound? And how many lone pairs are there in on xenon? You see here XeF4. How many lone pairs are there on xenon? 2. Same 2 lone pairs will be there. So lone pairs 2. And how many sigma bonds are there? 3 only now. And the hybridization is sp3d. And you keep the lone pairs at the equatorial position. So XeF3 plus shape will be T shape. It is isostructural with ClF3. Okay, similarly, what is the structure of this SbF6 minus? What is the structure of this PF6 minus? Octahedral. If you come to PF6 minus, on phosphorus there is no lone pair, and total sigma bonds 6. So the hybridization is sp3d2, and its shape is octahedral. So in these reactions, you can analyze the shapes of all the ionic and neutral species involved. And you see the structure of PF5, you can see the structure of SBF5, trigonal bipyramidal structures. And similarly, you can analyze the structure of XCF7 minus XCF plus. So this is the another reaction of fluorides of xenon apart from the hydrolysis.